And anyway, even if they can't see very much, they will want to hear what's going on, of course. So, okay, good. Let me get my microphone plugged in, if that's possible. Good. This is right. There we go. Oh, that's what I wanted. All right. So hopefully we've got most of the people that are coming. And the main thing I'll tell you is what is the schedule for today. And here's the story. Let me get rid of these extra things. All right. Yes, yes. I was getting pictures for the combat today. All right. So so this is 128, or 124, I mean. I'm not going to help confusion if I get too many things wrong. And as you may have noticed, I'm not Elizabeth again. This is going to happen pretty often because it really takes 2 teachers to teach this course because we have a lot of competitions. And Elizabeth's primary focus is being the coach for the competitions. So usually when we split up, I'll be teaching the normal class stuff and she'll be leading the competition team. And this is going to happen again in the future. And that's part of why we have 2 rooms and such. Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I think the competition is supposed to start at 10, but it has never started on time in years. It's always been at least an hour late. So realistically, so there are 2 things to do today. One is you can stay here and we'll cover the basics of Linux command line, which is what this is. That is pretty elementary stuff, however, and quite a few students probably already know it. So you might get more benefit from participating in the competition. And the competition will probably get set up down there in about a half hour. So if you do that, that's worth extra credit. I'm not quite sure how Elizabeth's going to grade it, but it's an invitational, so anybody can participate. There can even be a lot of people. You do not need to be an expert, and you don't have to be a full-time student or anything. So it's a very good thing to do to practice these competitions. Anyway, that's what's going to happen. I'm just going to talk about basics of Linux, and then I'll open up the lab and let people work up there. And at the same time, the competition will start down there at 10 or perhaps 10:30 or perhaps later. And it'll go on until maybe 2 or 3. The exact times are never very clear. I think the official time is 10 to 3, but it has never been officially on time before. However, it just moved to a new college and new administration. So it's possible that it'll actually be on time this time. But whether they're on time or not, it's a very good experience. Caitlin knows about it. She's done it several times. She's pretty much a champ. So anyway, that's what's going on. And so are there any questions about anything? One thing people have been emailing me for ad codes. Elizabeth has the ad codes. Hopefully that will become clear later. We can talk to her about that later. By the way, from what I understand, you don't need ad codes. All the teachers are screaming and yelling, saying people can add without ad codes. I found the opposite to be true. Students can't add even with ad codes. I've had 90 ad codes, and I looked today, and I've only had 5 students add. So as far as I can tell, nothing's working. Maybe they're added and waiting in some queue in some line to show up in my official list. But anyway, getting through the administration is your first captured flag problem. Other than that, I just want to cover the basics of Linux command line, which is in your textbook. And they call it using Kali Linux. And if you haven't gotten good at using Linux command line, you certainly should. The main Linux we're going to use here is Kali, although for this stuff, you could use a Mac terminal or pretty much any kind of Linux, but I'll do it on Kali just to be consistent for the people who might have Windows. And you should know the basics of using the command line. You should also know the Windows command line, but anyway, the only one we're going to do today is the Linux command line, bash. So here's Linux. Now, in general, if you install Kali Linux, it is very difficult to get VMware tools running. It'll only run about half the time, then it'll crash and die. And you can in principle work on this desktop, but in practice, I find it to be far too annoying. So what I highly recommend is to abandon using this desktop because these desktop virtualization products like VMware and VirtualBox are a waste of your time. Nobody really uses them. They're training and teaching tools, and especially since the advent of high-resolution Windows 10 machines in the last year, they're very, very defective and do not work very well at all. And you will spend a lot of your time debugging a virtualization product, and that is wasted time because nobody really uses them. What everyone really uses is cloud machines. So I recommend getting used to controlling cloud machines, and I'm going to do it with SSH here. Let me grab this. All right, so this is the first thing. You can install OpenSSH with just apt install OpenSSH server. And I should mention, by the way, this is as close as Linux gets to anything being easy. Linux on a desktop has never become popular because you just can't click on the mouse and get anything done. If you do double click on an installer, it never works because the GUI doesn't have any way to escalate to administrator, and it usually does not put a shortcut anywhere you can find it or an icon on the desktop or anything like that. So everything is done at the command line. So the only reason you have a Linux desktop is to waste your time until you open a command line terminal. This is part of why it never got anywhere, and people developed Mac OS, which is Unix plus a good GUI. None of the Linuxes have a GUI that's worth anything. They're probably going to hate me for saying this, but nobody lives on Linux to use graphical environments. So anyway, I've already got SSH, but I can upgrade it. It doesn't matter. I'll give it when you see two options like this, one capital and one small, well, it looks like I better turn those lights out. See if that's possible. Okay. Is that okay? All right. So when you see two options and one is capital and one is small, when you press enter, you'll get the capital choice. So I press enter, it installs OpenSSH. I already had it on here, but it's going to update it. This is what's supposedly easy, is installing software this way. The penalty is you can only get software that has a repository for your distribution. This particular app system is a Debian family. There are several families of Linux, the main ones being Debian and Red Hat. There's other ones like Slackware and OpenBSD for Unix. And the Debian repositories have precompiled binary software you can put on your machine, which is easy. The problem is there's often what you need is not in the repository, and often what's in the repository is really old, like years old. So often you install it and it doesn't really have what you need. However, for simple things like OpenSSH, it's good enough. And once you've started it, and I think it automatically starts after installing, you can see if it's running with Netstat. Netstat is the old one. It works on both Linux and Windows. If you execute Netstat alone, it shows you a lot of information about your network status, far too much information. So switches are very helpful. On Linux, the most helpful is pant. This will print TCP ports and all ports. It'll show you numbers instead of trying to resolve things to alphabetical names and give you a nice list of what's listening. And here you can see this machine is listening on port 22 here. Another irritating thing is, as you can see, it wraps in an unpleasant way. It's hard to read. That's why I want to use SSH. All I wanted to see here is that SSHD is running and it's listening on that IP address. Now I can connect with an SSH client. So that's what I'm going to do. If you have a Mac, you can just use SSH from the command line. And I think that's supposed to be in the very latest version of Windows too. Microsoft is finally adding it, having realized that they're not going to get people to use stuff like remote desktop. So 172.16, 123, 155. I connect, I give it my password, and now I can control the machine from here. This is much better because I can copy and paste into this, and I can adjust the size, and I can open as many of these as I want. Now, I just should mention, there is an irritation, and I think I don't have it in this class. I will add it to this class after this lecture. But if you do need to make an adjustment to use OpenSSH, and let me find it, which is actually pretty inconvenient right now. That's why I'll definitely have to add it to this class. I have it in my old 123 class, which I'm not teaching this semester. So I will put this link here to put SSH on. This is Kali there. There, this is the link I wanted. And I'm gonna, for right now, I'm gonna put that on the bottom of the 124 page. I'll move it right up to the projects after this class. SSH on Kali. There. Okay, so in the 124 class, if you go to the bottom, there's a link here, and this tells you how to put SSH server on Kali. This is the command I did. The other thing that's going to happen is SSH, if you use it this way, it is considered pretty insecure. One of the things is you can use an SSH certificate to log in, and that's essentially perfect. You have a long cryptographic key, but I'm using it with a password because I just don't care. I'm an attacker. I'm on a private network. And in that case, you can go in here and permit root login. Normally, you're not allowed to log in as root over SSH at all, and you normally come in with a certificate. But if you turn this on, then you can do what I'm doing and log in as root over the network, which is so that's what I've done here. And now I can control the machine from here, and that's what I highly recommend getting used to doing, because you can do the same thing with any cloud machine, an Amazon machine, a Google Cloud machine, or even a Microsoft Azure machine if you put an SSH server on it. Although usually in Microsoft you use RDP, so you get graphics and you can click on everything because the Microsoft operating system you usually control with the mouse. Linux you almost always control with the command line anyway, so this is all you need. You can make an SSH tunnel and run an X server and actually get a graphical environment on Linux, but you normally don't bother because the graphics on Linux are really just in the way for almost everything. So now, let me get back to my Linux command line stuff and let's talk about this. So, the first thing is you may not have permissions to do everything you want. You are somebody when you log into Linux. If you want to know who you are, you do who am I. Now, right now, I'm root because I'm using Kali. This also is something not recommended for security. And if you use more normal desktop distributions like Mint or Ubuntu, you won't run as root all the time. But anyway, even if you're not root, especially if you have compromised a server and you got some kind of shell by hacking into something, you will probably be somebody with very low privileges like www data or something. And you may not even have a home directory that you have the privilege to write to. So here, let's start with this. If I do ls, I get a list of files in the current directory. If I do ls and then I specify a directory, it gives me the files and folders in that directory. Now, these are the files and folders in the root of the file system. If you want to see more about them, you do ls-l root, and this gives you information about the files and folders in the root of this machine. And the thing to notice is the permissions. The first letter tells you if it is a directory or a file, a D is a directory, and a file would start with a dash. These L's are links, which are not that common, but for some reason I have several links in the root of my Kali system. Now, the most important thing for a penetration tester is the temp directory. Notice how it's colored in green. That's because this is readable and writable by everyone. That's what this means. These permissions are read, write, and execute for the owner of this object, read, write, and execute for people in the same group, and read, write, and execute for everybody else. So this is called 777 permissions. You can write this as a 3-digit base 8 number. So 111 is 7. And this is considered very unsafe. This means you have a folder that's world writable, world readable, anything put in there, anybody can use. The only folder that's normally this way is temp, and it's always this way. The purpose of the temp folder is, as you guess from the name, to put temporary things that aren't very important, and every time the system restarts, everything in the temp folder is deleted. It is for temporary things you put in there, and therefore, if you are a hacker and you gain some control of a server and you want to do something like write a script and run it, you typically put it in the temp folder because you have the ability to write and execute things there no matter who you are. So when you don't know where to go, it's a pretty good place to go. And so I can list the files here. I can list -L the files here. I can see a lot of things in here that have been put there, various things I put there while working on projects like this as an Android file I was working on. Anyway, so now I'm going to make a directory called 124 here and go into that directory. And here we have the main reason why everybody hates Linux. You don't have a GUI, you almost never use it, so you can't tell what's going on. Average users are just lost. There was a game long ago called Zork that existed just to teach you how to navigate this system. You have to remember where you are. And in Zork, you had to go north, 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 west, 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 north, up to get somewhere. And you had to like draw a map on a piece of paper to keep track of this. And that's what it is to navigate a file system. You have a current working directory. So if I do ls, it tells me there's nothing in this folder, but I don't remember what folder I'm in, so I don't know what's going on. It's very annoying. Now the bash shell puts the name of the folder on the left here, /temp/124, to give you some clue where you are, but a great number of people don't get used to this. And one thing you have to learn is relative paths. If I do ls/, slash is the root of the entire system. I could also do a relative, I could also refer to a like /temp and get those files, and I could even do ls/temp/124. And that would be the empty directory that I'm in. You can always refer to a full path for everything. So if you get confused, the simplest thing to do is put a full path for everything you do. /home/student/program, that would work. You can also use relative paths, especially when hacking. It's useful. So I can do ls of .. is the folder above the one you're in. Let me tell you a horrible story. So I was at DEF CON, and there should be a home folder. Yeah, here's a home folder. If you look at the home folder, okay, I made another account of this machine called Low. This is where most people usually go in Low. So you could log in as Low, and then you would be in this folder called /home/low. So a student of mine was an administrator at a big company on call. I was sharing my room at DEF CON. At 2 in the morning, his phone pings. He wakes up, does something, and he tells me, oh my God, he was on an Ubuntu server. And there was a permission problem with something in his home folder. So he went to his home folder, which would be /home/low. And he had some files in here, and he needed to fix the permission. So he decided, I'll save. He wanted to fix the permission on a hidden file. So let's do something here. If I do ls here, you see only a couple files. LSL tells you more information about those files. ls-la shows you all the files. There are a bunch of files that are hidden. In Linux, you hide a file by putting a dot in front of it. So this .bash history and all this .profile, they're in there, and they're just normal files, but the dot means you won't see them because you're not supposed to mess with them. They usually have configuration information for a program or something. So he needed to change the permission on one of these. So he did this command, chmod, say, to new permissions, like 777, .star. Now, when he did that, on normal Linuxes and Unixes, this would have the expected effect of just changing the permissions on those files, the ones that start with dot. But on Ubuntu, and as far as I know, only Ubuntu, this pattern also matches this. .dot is the special system thing that goes up one. And if you do this command, you will change the permission of everything in the file folder above the folder you're in. So by doing this command, he locked everybody else out of the system by changing the owner to him on all of their home folders by accident. So that's the kind of thing people don't love about the command line. Things often have unexpected results. Maybe you had a question there? Maybe not. All right. Anyway, so that's CD. Here's how you go to things. There's another special folder. If you do a CD alone, you go to your home. You can also refer to that as tilde. That's your home folder. And my home folder, you can find out where you are with print working directory, and it's /root is my home folder. /root is special for the root user. Most normal users, their home folder is /home/something. Anyway, so then you can learn more about a command. If you do ls, you might want options. You can do man ls, that's for the manual page, and this gives you a very long, very technical, essentially useless manual. Unless you want to spend like 20 minutes reading this, this is very unhelpful. Some people like to put examples at the bottom, which would be very nice, but almost every one I ever need help for, the examples are missing. So in practice, this is basically a waste of your time. The only thing that is helpful is if you pretty much know what to do, you do --help, and this gives you a quick summary. And what's, of course, the main way to actually learn how to do anything is just Google it. Far better than the online system. The online system was there for the days before the internet when you couldn't easily Google. Now you will often find useful things here if you spell the command correctly. There, ls examples, there you go. Now you get what you probably want, which is a few examples. This is how you do almost all programming and almost all coding at every level, is you do what you know how to do, and whenever you're lost, you find some examples from somebody doing what you need. Here's how to list hidden files and so on. This is what you do. You find some blog where somebody did something close to what you want, and you work from that. All right. Let me go back to my, okay. So there's privileges. Now, if you have a user, in fact, I've got it. All right, let's add a user. By the way, just to make you insane, there are 2 ways to add a user. So let's do add user -- help. Okay, and this tells you add user will add a user. There's another one called user add, and I can never remember which one is which, except one of them you're not supposed to use. And user add, this doesn't even tell you, which is excessively cruel. So it might look like you can use them both, but if you man them, user add tells you it is a low-level utility. You should use add user instead. So this is what Linux calls informing you of things. It's sort of like the way I inform students what room the class is in, or how the college informs you how to deal with the broken add system. There is technically a note somewhere you can't find. And anyway, then you can't sue. But anyway, so add user is what you do. Let's add a user. We'll make a user called 124. 123, that'll do. All right, fine, you can't use a number, fine. So I'll add a user called Joe. All right, now I can put in a password. I'm gonna make the password Joe. Unix does not have any complexity requirements or anything by default. You can do things like that, which are of course not recommended. And now I can put in all this jazz for user profile, or I can just press enter to put in nothing and press enter to make it correct. Now there's a user called Joe. The reason I used add user instead of user add is that added this user in completely. So if I look in the home directory, it created a home directory for them, and it put them in the password file. If you cat password, this is where all user accounts go. And they go in the order in which they are created. So here's the ones that were automatically created by the system, and here's the ones that were added as I installed software, like SSHD to run the SSH software I installed. And down here are the ones created after the system started. There is a number here, the user identifier, this 3-digit number. Numbers from 1,000 and up are created after the system was installed. The root user is the lowest one down here with 0. Root is always number 0. And all the user accounts created after that are here. So here is the line for Joe. Long, long ago, your password would just appear right there where the X is. For decades now, they figured out that's a terrible idea, and the X there means the password's actually in the shadow file. And you can look at the shadow file. And if you do, the passwords are all these long scrambled strings hashed, which is a defense mechanism, so that it's not easy to steal somebody's password. All right, so Lo and Joe have passwords, but you can't easily see what they are. So that has created a new user. And now this user can't do much. I can switch user to Joe. Okay, now notice I don't have a $sign, I have a pound. I don't have a pound, I have a $sign. The pound means you're root, and you can do anything. The $sign means you're not root, and there's a bunch of things you can't do. So for example, if I try to, let's do date. There's the date. Now I can take the date and put it in a file called foo. And when I do, permission is denied. I'm not allowed to create a file because I'm in the root directory. And the root directory is not owned by Joe. If I do cd, I go to Joe's home folder, which it shows me as tilde. Now if I do print working directory, I'm in home Joe. Now I can do date to foo. Now I've created a file called foo. The greater than sign here is output redirection. What that does is it takes whatever was going to go on the screen and puts it in a file. There are 2 ways to do it. You can also echo things, like I can echo hello. Okay, and I can echo hello to foo. And if I do that, my foo is now 6 bytes long. If I look in that file with cat, which prints out the contents of a file, I have hello. If I put the date in foo, and see how big that file is, it's now 29 bytes long. And if I cat it, it has just the date and the hello is gone. If I wanted to have 2 things go in the file, I would have to take something like that echo hello and put 2 greater than signs. 2 greater than signs adds new data to the end of a file without erasing the previous data. 1 greater than sign deletes the file and then creates a new file containing only the new stuff. So now, if I do ls-l, I have, the file is now 35 bytes long. Yeah, 26 was the date. And now, now I have that line and that line. And this is essentially what text editors do, this sort of thing. By the way, you have up arrow and down arrow to repeat previous commands in the bash command shell. This is one of the many conveniences that is good for interactive users and not good for scripts. And it has another disturbing issue, which is a huge big thing in all the capture the flag competitions. If you do ls-al, there's this file called .history, which I don't know why I'm not seeing. Bash history? Huh. It should have created a history file, didn't it? It must have. Anybody know where it is? I'm confused. Because I've got it. Yeah, see, there's a list of all the commands I've performed as Joe, and I thought it was supposed to be in your root folder called .history. I don't know why I'm not seeing it. Is it? Did you say root? You're not at root. Yeah, but I'm not. I'm Joe. It should be in Joe's home folder. Each user should have their own, and I thought it should be right here as .bash history. Well, I don't think it's root. Let's see. Let's exit from Joe and go to root. And then ls-al, and here is, there it is, bash history for root. Perhaps when I su, my commands still are treated as done by root. That's news to me. Let's take a look at this. Let's tail.bash history. And no, these are only the commands I executed as root. Huh, all right, so I don't understand something about bash history. All I know anyway is there's something strange there. I don't know where the history file went for the user Joe. Somebody can Google it and let me know. I thought it was in Joe's home folder, but apparently not. You found it?
No, you have a message.
What's that?
You have a message.
I have a message. Oh,
They probably have the answer.
good. Maybe somebody up here knows where the heck it went. Bash history only updates on exit. Oh, thank you. Only on exit. Because then when I exit and come back, it should do that. Good, let's try that. Thank you, that's right. So if I do switch user to Joe now, and then cd home, and then ls-al. Thank you very much. This like Windows profiles. Oh, now I can cat.bash history. Thank you. All right, and these are all the commands executed. I just mentioned this because like 3 competitions in the last year, people have started, and the organizers had such trouble setting up the machines, they forgot to delete the bash history. So you could just look in the bash history and find where all the machines are and the root passwords and all sorts of goodies. This is extremely big part of any pen test. Quick, first thing you do when you get on a machine is look in the history file. There's often a lot of goodies in there. Anyway, so thank you. I'm glad somebody will help me. I appreciate the tips. All right, so you can create a new file. I've already done it by redirection. If you wanted, I can touch. If I do ls, I have foo, I can touch bar. And now if I do ls-l, I have a file name bar of size 0. That's how you create an empty file. This is just to make a mark in a file system to see if you have write permission. Doesn't actually put any data in it. You can remove files. You can copy files. So I have a file named foo that's 35 bytes long. CP copies it, so I can copy foo to foo2. So now I have a second copy of foo. I can remove foo with rm. I can make a directory. And by the way, this is the pattern of doing anything in a command line. You do a command, and then you do an ls to see what happened. And then you do a command, and then you do an ls to see what happened, which is why it became far more popular to have GUIs, where it draws it on the screen, you can do something, and then the screen changes to show you what happened. In the absence of that, you just get in the habit of doing ls after every command to see what happened. So that removed foo. Now I can make a directory called mydir. Now if I do ls-l, I have a foo2 and a bar, and I have mydir. Now Unix, the Linux Ubuntu bash shell will actually color things, which I find pretty annoying, but that's the way it is. Colors things purple to tell you it's a directory. There's also a D there. So if I go into that directory, mydir, and now I do ls-l, there's nothing in here. If I do LA, it shows me the 2 system-created objects, dot and dot dot. Dot is the shortcut for the current directory, and dot dot is the shortcut for the parent directory. They're automatically created when you make a directory. So now, if I touch my bar in here, I now have a file in there. Now, if I go back to my home directory and do ls-l, one thing I frequently want to do is delete this directory. You can do that with rmdir, MyDir, and it will tell you you can't remove it because it's not empty. I found this to be very annoying. It's a very common situation that I do something like install software, it makes a config folder, it puts in a bunch of junk, then I decide I've messed it up, I need to start over, I want to delete the whole directory and all the contents. So then you need to do rm -rf. That will delete the whole thing without worrying you about the fact that it's full. Here's a fun fact about Linux. Linux does not give you any response when things work. It assumes you are confident you are an expert. It only lets you know if something went wrong. So if you do something possibly extremely dangerous, like remove an entire directory and everything in it, that could have been all your stuff, it doesn't say anything. Windows would say, about to delete 1,000 files, yes or no. Linux never bothers you with trivial messages like that. It assumes you're an expert. And there is no recycle bin, there's no undo. You're just hosed because you're supposed to know what you're doing. Another one of the many reasons why people pay money for Windows and the Mac, because ordinary users do not enjoy this environment. They find it too easy to get lost and do horrible things and not find any way back. Yeah, that's fine.
The reason that you weren't initially able to remove the directory was because you touched and so it left that print. Right?
Yes, because I made a file. If it was totally empty, it wouldn't complain. But if there's any files in there or subfolders, it won't let you delete it without, oh, that's funny. My cable's a little bit loose here. There, hopefully, all right. Well, yeah, that's good. All right, so anyway, now we've added text to a file. We've seen that. We've seen file permissions. We've seen editing files. The only thing remaining is a sed and awk and grep. So let's make a file. I like to use nano. Nano is what WIMPs use. The pros use VI. So let's make a file. Let's VI new file. Okay, when you open VI, you see this stuff. If you not type hello, nothing happens. It's very annoying. You're supposed to have memorized a bunch of things. I will insert text. Now I can do hello and enter and stuff. Now I want to save the file. This is what many people do. They're logged to figure out how to save the file. To save the file, you have to hit escape, then colon. Then you get a bar down here to put commands, and it's W to write a file and Q to quit. I highly recommend, if you don't use VI much, the only thing to memorize is escape colon WQ so you can get the hell out of VI and use something easier. The pros that use it all the time are very proud of themselves and very sharp because technically if you type all day long, it's less command strokes in VI than it would be in Nano. But unless you use it every day, it's very baffling. Anyway, that's VI. So WIMPs like me use Nano. So if I Nano new file, I can see there's the hello in there and the I went in there too, and there's some way to insert text without the I going in there, and I don't know it. Anyway, so let's put in a file here. So she had some text here to put in so we can play with it. I'm going to put in her example text with just a list of security conferences. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of this. Now, the reason I like Nano is because you have this help line down here. You can figure out how to do things. Control X to exit, and Control W is the search, and there are a few others. You can also Control K and Control U to cut and uncut, which is cut and paste. Those are the ones I commonly use. So I have an extra line up there I don't like. I'm going to get rid of it with Control K. Okay, now I've got a list of 7 lines, numbered 1 through 7, and an extra carriage return at the end. A bunch of extra carriage returns at the end. I'll just backspace them out. Okay, so there we are. Save this file with Control X, Y, Enter. And now if I do ls-l, I've got a file called new file with 127 bytes. And now we can play some games. You can cat that file, and that will just print all the contents of the file. You can grep that file. If I grep 5, new file, it will look for lines that contain a 5 and print out the whole line that contains a 5. There's only one that does, and that's it. You can grep for any kind of string, like moo. New file, that gives you the word moo. It is, of course, case sensitive, like everything in Linux. So if I grep for a capital moo, it's not there. You don't always need the quotes. You can often do it without the quotes, but if you have an embedded space or something, you'll need to use the quotes. Now I see a 1 space D. Let's see if I can get the line that has 1 space D in it. If you do that, 1 space D, you get some weird mess. It gave me the answer because it found the 1. It complained that it couldn't find the D. It thought that this D was the name of a file. And then it thought this was the name of another file. The problem here is that the space is a special character in bash that separates arguments. So if you wanted grep for one space d, the simplest, most obvious way to do it is this. Now you get the line that contains one space d. The cool people, or the people who are hackers and have hacked into an interface that will not let them enter quotes, which is fairly common, learn to do without the quotes. And the way you do that is you backspace out the meta characters, backslash out the meta characters. The backslash before the space tells bash to interpret it as a character, not as a meta character with a special significance. So now it finds that file. It looks for the literal string, one space d, as if it had been in quotes. This is also how you look for a quote. You use a slash to remove the special meaning. Now we can start doing things. You can substitute a file directly. Oh, but let's do a little bit of cut here. So if I do grep 5, new file, I now get 3 lines, 5 B-sides and star. This is often the case that you want to pick just one field out of here. So you can do that. You can pipe into a new command with pipe, and you can cut. And I can cut with a delimiter of space, and then put on field 1. Let me make sure I'm getting it right. Yeah, minus F1. Okay, now I get just the 5. This cut will take the data, split it on all the spaces, and now you have field 1, 2, 3. So you can pick one field out. Now this might seem pointless, but it's not pointless at all, because very commonly you have a script and you need your IP address. Well, how do you get your IP address? Typically you get it with ifconfig. That's the old way. The new way is IP adder. Both of them work on most systems. So let's try IP adder. I want my IP address. My IP address is here. It's all surrounded by junk. Suppose I want just the IP address and nothing else. You can get it, but you have to be pretty cool. So you take IP address and you pipe it to grep. Now I can look for a line like INET that's in that line. Now I get all these lines. Well, I'm getting there, but I'm down to 6 lines. So to get the IP version 4 address, which is what I want to not have a 6 there. So I guess I'll put a space after it. Maybe that will do it. That did it. Okay, now I'm getting just the lines that contain INET. But one of them is this loopback, and I don't want that. So I want the other one. Now I could put the name of the interface here, ETH0. That's one option. Maybe I'll go that way. So I can pipe it into another grep, ETH0. Okay, now, and you can build anything you want this way. It's like writing a little program, pipe, pipe, pipe. So now I've got the IP address command that was going to give me a whole page of junk. I picked out the 2 lines that have INET and the 1 line that has ETH0. Now I have all these fields. So I want just that one field, so I'm going to pipe it into cut. And I think I can use a space as a delimiter. Hopefully none of that junk is using tabs. I guess we're going to find out. And now let's put out field 1. Field 1 is empty. You could probably figure this out scientifically, but I never do things like that. I always do things just by trial and error because it's much faster. And very often, especially when you've hacked into a system, you don't really thoroughly understand what's going on. And just trial and error is more effective than trying to be smart. So I'm just going to guess 4. Just go up here and find a number that works, like 7. Okay, now I finally found a number that works. 7 is bird. So that was over there. So I guess 6 must be what I want. Okay, now this whole mess gave me the IP address, but it has an extra /24 in it. I don't want. So to get rid of that, I take all that and pipe it in cut. And now I use a delimiter of /. And now I take field 1. Except I think there's no space there, field 1. And now, what did I do wrong? Cut. Oh, I have a space there. Now the delimiter is / there. That is one of the many ways to get just your IP address. So now suppose I want to ping myself. I could copy that. Okay, here's another fun fact. If I want to ping this address, 172.16.123.155, it's going to go on forever, but it's working. If I don't want it to go on forever in Linux, I need to specify the count, like 2. That will do 2 pings and then quit. Now, suppose I want to have a script where I do that ping automatically, filling in the IP address. Here's how you do it. Instead of putting in the IP address, you put in dollars, parentheses, and then the whole command string. And what this does is it will evaluate this and put the answer here and feed it into the command. This is extremely useful. That's the way you can automatically program yourself. The problem is, if you take a Unix course or read a Unix book, they will tell you to do this with backtick characters. I don't know why anybody ever did this to us. There's this horrible thing called a backtick, and you can use it here. I highly recommend not doing that because it is very confusing. Yeah. It's on the upper left of your keyboard. It's the tilde key is a backtick, and it is used just for this purpose in a lot of Unix training manuals. It's very hard to read, very hard to remember. Very often that character doesn't survive passing through various systems. So I much prefer the old-fashioned format, which is dollars parentheses, which does the same thing and is easier to read. Yeah, I see Caitlin splitting. If you want to get involved in the competition, you might have to go down there now. How many people want to go down to the competition? Quite a few of you. All right.
Can we just observe?
Yes, you can just observe. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause things for a minute. I'm going to pause the share. I'm going to go downstairs and see what's happening. I bet they're still setting up, and we got another half hour. And then I'll just come back and let you know what I find. So I'm going to pause the recording, not the share. I'll pause the recording. All right. So they're being late. Supposedly it started. In fact, it's not working, and they're waiting for it to start. This is very normal. Liz is going to text me when they actually get it working. It was accessible to anybody, even people that are new and want to watch. They looks like you got about 8 people in there, and there's plenty of, you could all go do that if you want to. But if not, let me figure out how to turn this off. It might be right in front of me. There are many, many switches. Yeah, many switches, but I don't think any of them work. Anyway, all right. Anyway, we're nearly done with this stuff, but I just want to, awk. What's that? I think I did. Yes. I do appreciate the reminder because I failed to start the recording before, and that's been annoying. Okay, now you can do substitutions directly into a file. You often do this, and you'll see blog posts that tell you to do this to fix problems. It is considered somewhat dangerous, but you can do it. So let's run this ping command with the back check and see it go. Now, if I do an ls, I've got a new file, and I'm going to make a copy before doing something dangerous. By the way, here's another fun trick. Before you do anything, you make a copy. The convention is you copy new file to new file.back. This is a very good habit to get into, especially when you adjust a configuration file of any program. First, you back it up. Then you change it, because very often you find out, and often sometime later you find out, that something is horribly wrong and you wish you had the old thing to go back to. And it doesn't do this for you automatically. So you have to just get in the habit of doing it yourself. So now I have 2 files, new file and new file.back. Now I can try doing things to new file. So if I do grep black hat, new file, I can see there is a line that says black hat. If I want to change that to DEFCON, you do it with sed. And sed is the string editor, stream editor. You can change things in a file directly. You do sed, then you give it a command, then you give it the name of your file. And the command can do various things, but the most common one is substitute. So you substitute one string with another string, and you can use any delimiter here, but the most common one is slash. So if I do that, it will substitute black hat by DEFCON in new file, if I've done it right. And now it shows you, now this says DEFCON. And if I do ls minus L, these files are still the same length, which is a little strange. Yeah, let's cat it and see. Oh, it just put it here. Okay, I thought it would change it in place, but I guess I'm wrong. Okay, mock must be the one that changes it in place. I never use these much. Sed very rarely. Awk I almost never use. I almost never remember how to do it. But awk you have some ability to pick files out and put them in here. Anyway, if I wanted to print out this modified file with black hat changed to DEFCON, the way I would do it is this way. Now put this in to file 3. And now if I do ls minus L, you have new file 3, and it's a different length because it has different contents. Anyway, there's also this thing called awk that can refer to things and replace them, and I don't think I'm going to go through it. Yeah. That's a good question, and I'd have to Google it. I thought sed changed it right in the file, but apparently not.
So, but it did change it.
It did change it and put it on screen, which to me is much safer. And then you can put it in the file if you want. But there is one that changes it right in the file, and I think, that's not this one. I got something here, and it is okay, they have now been able to log in down there. So you guys can work down there. I'm not sure there's anything that crucial going on here. We've pretty much covered this stuff. I think what I'm going to do is just stop it here. There's a couple more things like cron jobs, but I think it'd be more exciting to get involved in the contest. Just go down to the contest, and if you want to work on normal homework, I'll open up the lab. And I'll just go back and forth between the rooms for the remainder of the day to see where I can help people. But the main thing, I think, is check out the contest. It's very good for you. So I'm just going to clean up. I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to open up the lab. And then I'll go down and see how the contest is going. Stop the share.